My name is Russell Bowles, and I will present the first part of this on the road to compliance for this process. Okay, so this training today will discuss the remediation process and expectations, remediation strategies for the child protecting agencies, and accessing the remediation tab and submitting a remediation plan. We'll also go through technical supports and resources. So in collaboration with WSU, we will cover those topics. All right, so some of the key phases of today's training will be the systemic assessment, the provider self-assessment, the remediation, the heightened scrutiny, transition, new providers or sites, and ongoing monitoring. A quick rundown of the timeline we've had so far. So starting in March of 2014, CMS, which is the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, published the HCBS Settings Final Rule. And then in the month of February of this year, so for February 1st through February 29th of 2020, the CPA Self-Assessment was opened for submission. And now looking forward to the future, this is a target date, but by July 1st of 2020, heightened scrutiny categories 1 and 2 must be submitted to CMS. So we're going to try and get that done as best we can based on the COVID pandemic. So the other aspect of that is October 30th of 2020, heightened scrutiny category 3 must be submitted to CMS. And then a very important date is July 1st of 2020. All settings all settings need to have the remediation evidence submitted to Community Connections by that date. And then currently we're still going with the date of March 17th, 2020, that all settings must be in compliance with the final rule, and that is a CMS provided date. All right, so the systemic assessment. So Kansas has continued working to modify systemic documents to come into compliance with the final rule. Those documents include the review of state statutes, regulations, policies, procedures, and contracts. Again, those are at the state level, so those are ours that we're working on diligently getting reviewed and any changes made to. And then the foster care is a section of the systemic assessment that needs to be reported. CMS's waiver services are being utilized in these settings. So those examples may be under the serious emotional disturbance or SED waiver, or the intellectual developmental disability IDD waiver. Might be where those are some of the waivers that are associated with this. So, and there will be opportunities for stakeholders to review and provide feedback on updated regulations and the systemic assessment changes during public comment periods for the Department for Children and Families and Kansas Department for Aging and Disability Services. So you need to be aware and be looking for those in those settings, web locations, and just look for those notifications. The self-assessment. This phase was completed in February, and KDADS continues to review those assessments to determine what areas CPAs need to remediate. And then remediation for Kansas is based on the idea that providers or contractors and settings will come into compliance. Those that are willing to do so will be able to do so. So we believe everybody can come into compliance. Remediation notifications are being processed and sent out for CPAs. So more on the self-assessment. The CPA self-assessment example questions. We have this up there because one of the biggest things that we want to go back to the timeline on is if you're a CPA and you took an assessment prior to February 1st, we may not be looking at the correct assessment for you. So this should have been the assessment you took. And it will have questions as an example. So, do you have policies or procedures that ensure that foster homes provide opportunities for persons served to participate in organized community events, activities, and services as appropriate for the child's age? What we're looking at really to emphasize on this is we're looking at the policies and procedures that are related to this. And then the follow-up question to that is, do you assess that foster homes provide opportunities for persons served to participate in organized community events, activities, and services? So we're looking for two things from the child placing agencies, and those are if you have policies and procedures, and then we're looking at how you assess. What are your procedures to assess? Remediation. Once a self-assessment has been completed, an email and a letter will be sent to the CPA contact email on file describing what needs to be remediated. So you'll get a it'll be a table, and it'll have the question, and it'll tell you in very general terms what we need, right? If there's nothing to be remediated, the CPA will get a notice of compliance, and the email and letter. So you'll get that email or letter saying that you are compliant. You'll also receive an email and a letter that describes the remediation process and instructs how to access the timeline and put in a plan for how you plan to remediate. Okay, so a remediation plan. For each self-assessment question that needs to be remediated, so on that table, they'll be by question. CPA will select a remediation strategy and a time frame for when they plan to have the strategy completed. So not the time frame of when you submit it, but tell us, okay, we need to work on this, and this is when we plan to submit that, right? So time frames are required as part of the remediation plan. It won't let you submit the plan without it. All right. So what are we looking at as evidence? What can be good evidence? So we are looking at policies and procedures, our agency documents that explain how the CPA provides guidance in different areas. Procedures are steps on how to carry out a policy. So what we're looking at is how you do business on a normal basis, right? Assess procedures are agency documents that outline how the CPA assesses foster homes for compliance with regulations and policies. And then foster homes must be in compliance with revised DCF regulations, CPA policies, procedures, and HCBS Settings Final Rule requirements, by March 17th of 2022. So compliance with final rule will be shown through a review and acceptance of CPA policies and procedures by KDADs. Practice to show compliance in foster homes will be monitored using home visits, phone calls, and etc. in partnership with DCF, the CPA, and KDAD. So we'll all work together to make sure compliance is met. All right. So what are we looking at in policies and procedures? Policy procedures are the preferred documents to answer the first part of what you need. Back up there. Policies and procedures should have the following qualities at a minimum. So the organization identification, we need to know who you are, what your policy is about, which would be your policy title and or a policy number, what's your effective date or revised date for that policy, and then a lot of times you'll let us know that you review them on as needed or annually. So you'll regularly review for updates as needed. Okay, procedures for assessments. They should have the following qualities. Again, organization identification, let us know who you are. The procedure title and or policy it is in reference to, the procedure effective date or revised date, and a clear set of steps to implement the policy and procedure. Please be precise, short, and to the point. Those work as the best ways for identifying this information. Regular review for updates is needed, and especially when policies are updated. So heightened scrutiny. We'll talk about heightened scrutiny. It has 3 categories. However, as a CPA, should only be determined a category 3. So we'll talk about category 1 and 2, but we'll be more specific on category 3. So category 1 is settings that are located in a building that is also a publicly or privately operated facility that provides inpatient institutional treatment. Category 2 are settings that are in a building located on the grounds of or immediately adjacent to a public institution as described in or defined in category 1. We also, just for reference, immediately adjacent to, we refer to as sharing a property line. So that would be that part. Category 3 is where the CPAs mostly would be caught for this, and that is any other setting that have the effect of isolating individuals receiving Medicaid home and community-based services from the broader community of individuals not receiving Medicaid HCBS. Okay, so how exactly does that work? Heightened scrutiny is triggered by the self-assessment, question C1 for CPAs. And this is the question. So section C is integrated setting and community access. Question C1 is, do you place children in foster care homes that are designated to serve only children with disabilities? That is okay. It is not a problem to do so. As we do know, there are homes that do specialize in service, have specialized services. So keep in mind, it's okay to place children in those locations with specialized services. However, KDADs and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services must ensure that persons served have access to the greater community and to those that are not receiving HCBS to guard against potential isolation. So that's what we're looking at, is just making sure those individuals aren't being isolated. Okay. If a CPA's self-assessment triggers heightened scrutiny, the modification and resubmission of policies and procedures will be the first step towards overcoming that. Again, showing us how they're not being isolated. If an on-site visit is needed, so presumptive isolation of an individual in a setting away from the greater community. Examples of that could be placement is outside of town limits, only serves person with disabilities, etc. Just kind of think of the isolating on a normal basis, not specifically during this pandemic time. So, right. KDADs will work with DCF to determine if the setting is HCBS compliant, and then all site visits if needed, will be conducted in collaboration with current DCF CPA quality checks to ensure a child's rights, choices, and access to the greater community are compliant in regard to person-centered service delivery and age appropriateness. Transition process. So what would happen if a CPA is unable to come into compliance? There will be a transition process, and that talks about where children will not be able to access home and community-based funds if they are placed in foster home settings, choosing not to come into compliance or unable to come into compliance with final rule. If a child continues placement in a non-compliant home, another source of funding must be secured to begin payment for services on March 18th of 2022. So that's saying that after March 17th of 2022, HCBS funds will no longer be used for that individual, and another source of funding would need to be utilized. KDADS will collaborate with DCF and the CPA on the transition of children into a compliant foster home. The DCF transition will follow a 14 to 30-day written notice to relocate as dictated by contracts for children in DCF custody, and private placements will follow CPA policies as governed. So continuing, all remediation evidence must be submitted to communityconnectionsks.org by July 1st of 2021. This is to allow KDAD's desk review team to review your evidence and communicate back with you about your compliance. So it's the time that allows us to make sure that we can review it and make sure that you're in compliance, okay? Prior to March 17th of 2022. So please note that if a submitted evidence shows a foster home is unable to meet the final rule requirements by March 17th of 2022, it will no longer receive HCBS funding beginning March 18th of 2022. Transition notifications to children and their support team must begin no later than October 1st of 2021. Again, that allows us and all the agencies involved to make sure that we are able to place the participants or the children in a compliant setting prior to the end of March 17th, 2022. Okay. So new homes. Once a CPA is deemed compliant, all new foster homes must be assessed by the CPA to be compliant with the final rule requirements. So once a CPA has been determined, all the homes that they review must also be in compliance. Ongoing monitoring. After a foster home comes into full compliance with the final rule, ongoing monitoring will ensure it remains in compliance. So this isn't just we're doing this one time and then we're done. This is a continuation process. Compliance will be shown through a review and acceptance of CPA policies and procedures. Practices showing compliance in foster homes will be monitored using home visits, phone calls, etc., in partnership with DCF, CPA, and KDADS. State regulations are in the process of being updated to combine DCF requirements and KDAD's home and community-based services final rule requirements. So we do expect some changes coming there. The regulations will begin the process of legal review in July of 2020. It is anticipated that a regulation review by all required state agencies, in addition to the public comment period, will take up to a year to complete. So we understand that there are changes in the future that will need to be made. So some clarification and tips. It is possible that questions marked as compliant by the provider on the self-assessment had evidence attached that did not meet validation criteria. These questions will be seen in the remediation and may need clarification. So with that, basically we're reviewing these, and the evidence is you gave us what you had, so now we're looking in to make sure it meets criteria. If it doesn't, we'll work with you to get that into compliance. So before resubmitting any evidence, review it to determine, does it answer or remedy the self-assessment question that it's being submitted for? If a question is in bold red on a remediation plan, it needs to be addressed first, as that relates to the heightened scrutiny. And again, review to ensure submitted evidence addresses the questions asked. Before picking the other box for a remediation strategy, and what we mean by that is when you go to select your strategies, there's some predetermined options there. And then there's always, we have the other box. So if those options don't meet what you're wanting to do, then you can select other. Keep in mind, carefully look at the listed options that are there to make sure that they do not meet what you're wanting to do before you select other. So the other box is envision for foster care remediation fit into one of those strategies already listed. Again, that will save a lot of time. Check, double check evidence for adherence to the specific question that you've submitted it for. So example with that is, do you have policies or procedures that ensure that foster homes offer privacy to persons served while using a telephone, internet, or any other personal communication devices as appropriate for their age? If restrictions are in place, are they described in person-centered documents, right? Age appropriate means activities or items that are generally accepted as suitable for children of the same chronological age or level of maturity. Age appropriateness is based on the development of cognitive, emotional, physical, and behavioral capacity that is typical for an age or age group. Okay. So with that, we can hold our questions, and I will turn it back over to Zane.
All right, thanks, Russell. Yep, thank you, Russell. We're going to hold questions and comments until after this next presentation, and I want to invite Percy Turner from Wichita State to share his screen. Already doing it. Good job, Percy. Let me know if we can hear you.
Okay, testing. Can everybody hear me?
Your test is good.
All right. So my name is Percy Turner, and my name is on this slide. I am going to do pretty much whatever I can to act like I am helping you understand the technical side of the remediation tab, but I'm going to end up accomplishing just frustrating you and making you upset. Some of the things that I'm really going to try and focus on, Russell kind of talked about some concepts, the idea of the other choice and things like that, and I will kind of come back around to those as I give you a view of what the remediation tab looks like. And so you'll get this information twice, but hopefully the second time it will be in the correct context to really promote understanding. So first, let me remember how PowerPoint works. There we are. So first things first, you have to go back to communityconnections.org. I know that a lot of people have sworn our site off, but you will have to go there, and you will have to log in with the information that you used to take the assessment. So a couple things are still true. Internet Explorer is still a bad program. No matter how many times they try and sue me, I am never going to stop saying, do not use Internet Explorer for anything the site that has to do with these sites. And the reason that is because it just does not agree with the programming packages that we've used to build the remediation tab and that we used to build the original assessment. As of right now, We are asking that no one upload videos because we do, when it comes to evidence, we do have a maximum file size for evidence. While the majority of the time documents are generally smaller, videos usually can get pretty big. So they usually will exceed that maximum file size. Please don't use them. Keep in mind that one requested change might cover multiple points of remediation, but just like in the assessment, you'll have to go ahead and put that change in every question or every remediation piece that it pertains to. You can't just put it in one thing and expect a reviewer to apply it to all things. So just be mindful of that. And as you guys are more than likely aware, remediation plans are for CPAs are per agency and not by the site. So the steps are: you will receive a remediation notification that may be via email or via letter. You should navigate with your internet browser, not Internet Explorer, to communityconnections.ks.org. Log in with the same information that you used to create and complete the self-assessment. After logging in, your dashboard will look like this, okay? The biggest thing that you want to make sure of is when you log in, it will start on the tab dashboard, and that will give you all the old stuff that had to do with the assessment. It'll tell you that the assessment period is over. You are going to click to that second tab, which says remediation, where my giant red arrow is. Once you click on that tab, you're going to see this remediation page. It's going to give you your name. It's going to give you the site name that you have, the address, and the rest of this is kind of I call it a click to move system. So you're going to click anywhere on the line where it says your site name, address, contact. You click on that, and it'll bring you to our next screen, okay? The next screen is going to highlight all of the questions that have to be addressed. So here you see a couple things. You see different colors, right? So obviously the colors that are kind of this gray are things that have not been addressed. You see the black colors as something that has been addressed that's waiting on KDAD's approval. You see this red, and I'll explain red in just a minute. The easiest way to look at these is to note that, number one, if you have a red question or an orange question, you need to deal with those first. Those pertain directly to heightened scrutiny. And I believe that for CPA assessments, it is only red. But we do have a color legend, and here it is. So red means heightened scrutiny needs to be remediated first. Orange is another category of heightened scrutiny. For all intents and purposes, it just means do it first, deal with it first. The black here, remediation has not begun. Green, and so on and so on and so on. Okay? So this is available actually on the site. So you won't have to pull up this presentation, though I'd love for you to remember this wonderful time in which I explained it to you. This should be on the site for you. If you have any questions for this, near the end of our presentation, I will give you some different ways to talk to somebody regarding this information. So main ideas, there's a bunch of questions that need to be assessed. They are in different colors. There's a color legend, okay? When you click on the question, it's going to bring you to this site, and I'm going to show you it in 2 slides. You click on a question, it's going to show you, number one, the top of this page shows you all your demographics, right? It also gives you the opportunity to look at the original PDF that you submitted. So it's been a little while since you did your self-assessment. You might want to see what evidence you put in. You might want to know how you answered certain questions. You can look at that PDF. It literally says PDF and view original submission. That will bring you directly back to your site assessment. This will also tell you about heightened scrutiny, whether you've been flagged for it or not. The second part of the page will bring you to that question, okay? And it very specifically gives you the question itself, the reason for remediation, reminds you of the site, and gives you a status, okay? The next thing that it does is it offers a strategy. And this is where we're going to start talking about how to actually remediate. How you're going to remediate is going to be tied directly here. So KDAS has pre-populated a strategy for every single question. It may or may not work for you, and we'll get into what you do if you don't feel like this works. But you're going to click that strategy. There may be multiple ones, so you'll click the one that best suits you, and you will save it. If you feel like this doesn't work for you, then you'll select other, and we'll get into that in the next slide. So this is everything that I just said. Click the checkbox for a remediation strategy that fits the needs of your agency. You will be prompted after you click that box to enter a date. Now, Russell earlier talked about that date. The date cannot be set past July 1st, 2021. All evidence of remediation needs to be in by that date. So we created that date because we wanted to make sure that there was ample time for KDADs to review or time for transition, which, as the smiley face says, we are not going to need, right? So I said we would talk about the other box in more depth. Now you see where the other box lives when you are selecting a strategy for remediation. You may feel that the suggestion that we've put out there is not right for your setting or doesn't apply as well. And so you can choose not to follow that suggested action. You can click other, and you can craft your own strategy. The other box is only for crafting remediation strategies. The other box is not a means to have a conversation with KDADs. So if you mark other and you say, I don't know why this question was marked wrong, I don't agree with that, that's not a remediation strategy. We're going to have to reject it. If you want to open up that conversation with KDADs, there are other ways to do it, and we'll get to that as we get further into our presentation. But just keep in mind that the other box is only for unique strategies, okay? Now, having that said, KDADs will have to review that unique strategy and accept it. KDADs advises that a CPA wait for feedback on that submitted remediation plan before they get to doing any remediation, right? KDADs will have to go ahead and give you feedback regarding your tailored plan, and then once that happens, you can go ahead and get remediation underway. So now we've gone through a fair amount. You've identified what site you wanted. You've gone through and seen what questions need to be addressed. You've decided to address a question. You've selected a strategy, whether it was one of the pre-populated strategies or one of the other strategies. You've even selected a date sometime before July 1 of 2021 where you believe evidence will be available to prove the change, right? Now, after all of that is done, you will have the option of putting in evidence. So evidence will be uploaded on the page that you see. It looks very much like the self-assessment piece. You're going to either click the button that says choose files. It'll open up a dialog window for you to go through your computer and to select the files that you'd like to use as evidence. You can also drag it over to that field where it says no file chosen, and it will populate it for you there. As we talked about in the assessment, it is best if you collect this evidence prior to addressing and submitting strategies and things like that. So it's just easy to click through, but however you do it is completely up to you. If you do submit an other, you will not be able to submit evidence until KDADS approves your nuanced remediation strategy. So just be aware of that. You will not get this dialog box immediately. If you choose one of the pre-populated strategies and a date, then you will immediately get access to putting in evidence. Again, a simple reminder, all evidence needs to be submitted by July 1, 2021. So evidence must be uploaded for each item listed on the remediation plan, even if that evidence covers multiple questions. It has to be uploaded for every question because it has to be reviewed with that specific question in mind. Evidence will be validated in the same manner as the self-assessment. That means it's going to be a two-tiered system. It'll be validated first, and then it will go to the KDADS desk review team for a final review. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and it may be difficult to think of how to keep track of all of this. We've built in something called the activity log. It is an active document that will show your progress. Now, our system is designed to give you a contact email notification when the status of a question changes, but it is also important, and as you guys are probably finding out in this COVID-painted landscape, email is not the most dependable thing. Between junk mail and email addresses being entered wrong, it is really, really important that you are diligent in checking the website for updates throughout the process. So as you can see here on the bottom with the activity log, you see that the actual site has updated a question and a staff member has flagged, right? So, and you can also see the times when this happened. This is for everybody. You can kind of monitor when things are happening, how long things are taking, so on and so forth. All of that information is right there for you in the activity log. So we've talked about a lot of different things here regarding the process, regarding the website, accessing the website, getting your password together, remembering everything. Chances are you're going to need some support and resources. So here is that page included in our presentation. There are a fantastic amount of things at the support page on the communityconnections.ks.org. website. There's also a live chat. My personal favorite thing to talk about is our live chat function for a variety of reasons. Most importantly, the live chat allows you to access people just directly on your computer. It will pop up kind of creepily as you are navigating through the Community Connections website. However, if there's, for whatever reason, somebody had to go to the bathroom, or you're accessing after the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. when chat is normally open, if you're accessing at that time, it will automatically archive what you send to us, and then we can respond to you via the email, which, hey, by the way, you can sign up for email updates. I'm really good at this. You can sign up for email updates also on the website. There are stakeholder calls that take place the third Wednesday of every month from 12 to 1 and from 5:30 to 6:30 for you night owls. The phone number and the information there is listed below. If you are utilizing the live chat, you may be getting an email from hcbs.team@wichita.edu. That is the email that we use for all of our live chat workers. So just be aware that if you get an email from that account, it usually will be entitled something around your live chat question or your email or something in that regard. It's going to be some pretty important information regarding the remediation process, the self-assessment, or something to do with your compliance with the final rule. So make sure you're checking your mail. If you are unable to get a hold of us on the live chat, that will be the place that you go to look. Other than that, there are some very wonderful and specific pieces of guidance around evidence in the Community Connection Support tab, and just check out that toolbox because it has a lot of great information. I really appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit more about your journey on the road to compliance, and I've just given you all the tools that you need to contact us if you have any further questions or concerns. I really appreciate your time. Have a fantastic day.